11 police officers turned up.
Yeah.
They basically said you had committed a hate crime by using that F word in a private text message.
I was in utter shock.
If the state can pry on our private conversations, that really does take us into Orwellian territory.
You don't have a free nation there. Who cares if she was like, you know what, I am homophobic, and I said it because I'm homophobic. That's her business, right? You can say what you want.
Something can be a homophobic slur, even if a person doesn't realize that that's what they're doing.
Andrew, would you use that word?
Sure, you use it all the time. It's one of the best ways to describe friends, right?
Any minute now, we are going to see the annual controversy about the Pogues' great song, Fairy Tale of New York, which has the famous lyric, "You scumbag, you maggot, you cheap lousy."
The Oxford English Dictionary has just named rage bait as its word of the year. They define it as content deliberately designed to elicit outrage by being frustrating, provocative, or offensive. I thought it was only appropriate to mention that story given the hullabaloo over my polite reticence to use the F word. And no, as you're probably well aware, it's not that F word.
Would you say the word faggot on camera?
No.
Why?
Because
You don't want to get arrested, do you?
doesn't want to be arrested.
Because it's so harmful to people?
No,
Is that like gay bashing? What's wrong with that?
No, actually, my whole issue with the whole trans debate, for example, is you don't need to slide into actually saying derogatory stuff about trans people to make the point that women's rights should be protected. You don't need to.
Well, I agree.
So what? I don't believe.
No, but it's a magic word.
I don't believe in needlessly sneering.
Well, I'm not smearing anybody. I just think.
But what would you use that word?
Faggot?
Yeah.
I just did.
Yeah, but would you use
faggot.
Okay, but why?
And I'm using it because you're not allowed to, because you're.
I'm allowed to.
Go ahead.
I don't want to.
Say, I love gay people. Faggot.
I'm allowed to. I just choose not to.
Well, we'll talk about the F word again shortly with my panel who are standing by, but Tucker Carlson's claim that I could be arrested for saying it was based on a real story he'd read in the Daily Mail. A nursing home worker had been arrested and convicted, he said, for using that word in text messages about a man she claimed had assaulted her. As I said in the interview, it sounded utterly ridiculous, latest in a string of examples of an assault on free speech in the UK. But I hadn't actually read the story, and I said I'd look into it afterwards. That's exactly what I did, and I'm pleased to say that Elizabeth Kinney, the mother of four who was convicted over her text messages, joins me in the studio now. Elizabeth, thank you for coming in and joining us today for this debate. Just first of all, just to clear up exactly what happened to you, explain to me and the viewers what went down.
I was assaulted by a male acquaintance. And
Physically or sexually?
Physically.
Physically.
It wasn't my ex-partner. It was a friend, like a group of friends. The female acquaintance that she was getting jealous over me because she started seeing my ex-partner. So she was trying to cause trouble for me, which ended up resulting in me getting attacked. After that, obviously, I went to the hospital and I sent her messages and pictures of my injuries, just to prove like what she'd caused. And obviously, I was very upset at the time. I'd had a inflammation on my brain. I had a skull fracture, which made me not really feel like myself at the time. I was very upset and I was very angry with what had happened to me, which made me say messages that I really wouldn't have said.
So you sent her a load of messages. I mean, would you categorize them as abusive, highly abusive?
It was more just to pointing to the fact that what had happened to me. I only just sent her pictures of my injuries, and obviously said why would you cause this much trouble for me and stuff, and make up lies, and which now resulted in me being attacked. And
she then reported you.
Yeah. For
what she said were harassing messages.
Yeah, it was a 5-minute period of time when I just.
How did you feel when the police contacted you?
Well, I was shocked. I didn't expect that. I mean,
because these are private text messages.
Throughout my life, I've had messages with my friends and we've fallen out and we've said things that aren't very nice to each other, but you would never really expect that to go any further than that.
I've heard 11 police officers turned up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'd left my front door open. I was waiting for my dad to come to the house. I was actually in the bath. And
11
they opened the door themselves.
And just came in?
And came in.
And you're in the bath?
Yeah.
And what do they say to you?
Well, I heard my name, which was one female out of the lot of them.
And 10 male officers?
Yeah. And then I heard my name, and I thought, oh, it might be my sister, because it didn't sound like someone who was... Because obviously I was upstairs in the bath. And then they just come up the stairs, and they didn't give me any privacy or anything. Like, I had to...
You were naked?
Yes.
How did that make you feel?
Disgusted and really upset. I was crying my eyes out.
And what did they say to you? What did they say they were there for?
Well, I was just asking them, can they just leave the female officer, and can they please go downstairs, as obviously I was upset and I had no clothes on, and they kind of wanted to watch me get changed, and I was very upset about that. In the end, they did send the males down the stairs, and the female officer sat with me. I was crying my eyes out. I was really upset. And then I said, well, what are you even here for? Because I was shocked. I was in utter shock. And she said, for malicious communications, hate crime and malicious communications. And I said, well, what for? And they said, we'll discuss that when we get to basically to the police station.
So you go to the station, and then they outline that it's these messages you sent to this friend that you've had this argument with. All connected to the fact that you yourself, as you say, have been assaulted. I'm not going to get into that so much. Is one of the more inflammatory things about this whole story, which Tucker Carlson picked up on, was in the course of these text messages, you use the F word. We've already said what that word is. He repeated it many times. I choose not to say it. You can do what you like. But that word, did you intend it in the messages to be a derogatory, homophobic slur?
Absolutely
Because
not.
that is the alleged crime, is that you were promoting hate towards gay people by using that word.
First of all, a lot of my friends are gay. I am not homophobic in any way, shape or form. The word in question is a word that in our town where we live, we associate that word with somebody who, well, mainly males who hit females. Like, it's never a word for a sexuality. It's always a word where we live in our context, as in, like, basically a weak person. For instance, my brother's best friend got sent off the pitch in football last week because one of the guys fell over, and, you know, he called him that name, but it was just a joke. But he got sent off the pitch because, but in our context, like, it just means, like,
and you got
weak.
I mean, in the end, you pleaded guilty. First of all, why did you plead guilty?
My solicitor told me to.
Right.
And I've never been into trouble before, and I was really concerned about...
You had no criminal record?
No.
Because the malicious communications offences, which is under which you were prosecuted, such as sending grossly offensive messages, can receive a hate crime sentence uplift if motivated by hostility towards a protected characteristic like race, religion, sexual orientation, or disability. So you got an uplifted sentence. They basically said you had committed a hate crime by using that F word, which, given that you had no intent to be homophobic with it, for the reasons you've outlined, just seems preposterous.
Yeah.
In a private text message to somebody.
I didn't even say it to the person.
Who you were angry with because you had been assaulted.
Yes.
I mean, has anything happened about the assault?
When I was in the hospital, the police were called by the doctors and nurses, and everyone in question were arrested at that given point. Then I ended up getting arrested a week after that.
And what's happened with
No one ever came back to me to discuss that. No one wanted statements from me. They were just obviously more... It seemed like they were more...
So there's been no
concerned.
prosecution?
No.
So the fact you were assaulted was deemed to be less serious, it would appear, than the fact you'd used this F word in communication, private communication, with this woman you'd had a falling out with.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
Very, very disheartened and upset. It's destroyed my character as a person. I've been a care assistant since I was 17, and I want to be a nurse. I like helping people. I want to save people's lives. I have got a good character. As obviously, I'm still working in my post now. My managers haven't let me go for the reason being they know me as a person.
They stood by you.
Mm-hmm. I've got everyone's got my back in this.
Yeah, what
whole
reaction
thing.
have you had from the community?
Everyone's had me back, and everyone's been so supportive. I mean, I've not heard one bad word said about this whole. That everyone's just as disgusted as I am. How far it's got.
I didn't even know it could be a crime
Neither did
to, in
I.
a private message,
Neither did I.
use language like that.
Neither did I.
What do you think it says about free speech in this country?
Well, it's not as heavy as it is in America, but I believe that.
Actually, it's better in America.
Yeah.
This would never have happened in America.
Yeah.
Their First Amendment protects your right to be offensive if you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not, it's one thing if you came in and said, yeah, I said all these things and I stand by it and I wanted to be homophobic, that's one thing. But you had you were angry because of what had happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a hospital getting treatment for injuries sustained in what you say was an attack. And I don't know, obviously, about that side of it, but I'll take your word for it. And then you have 11 police officers charging into your home as you're having a bath.
It was very, very frightening. I've had nightmares and everything about it, and I've got cameras on my house and stuff. I keep them on and make sure the doors are always locked now, because it's not even the public that anyone needs to be scared of these days. It's the police.
Did you think you might go to prison for this?
Yeah.
Did they warn you might?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. 5 to 10 years.
That's what they said you may get?
Yeah.
Because that's the maximum sentence you could have got.
For hate crime.
Again, I mean, what were you feeling when you heard that?
I was devastated.
You've got kids.
I was devastated.
Your 4 kids you have?
Yes.
How old are they?
15, 12, 9 and 3.
I mean, it would have been devastating.
Mm-hmm. It was. And it still is now, to be honest.
Right. I mean, you end up, you're pretty guilty. You got a sentence to a 12-month community order with requirements you undertook 72 hours of unpaid work and 10 rehabilitation activity days, and you were ordered to pay £364 in costs, about $500. So you didn't go to prison in the end, which must have been a great relief.
Yeah, of course.
When you look back on the whole thing, though, what do you feel about it?
I feel upset. The fact that I feel like I'm scared to even. I'm even scared to say the word now. That's why I'm saying the word in question, because
Well,
I
that
don't
was Tucker
know.
Carlson's point, and the reason he kept saying it. I've known Tucker a long time. He wasn't saying it to be homophobic. He was saying it to make the point that he was in England and he didn't care about whether somebody was going to arrest him. He was suggesting that I didn't want to say it because I was fearful of arrest. That wasn't the case. I don't like using that word full stop,
Neither do I.
because gay friends of mine say it's offensive to them, even though many of them use it. But it's the same argument as the N word for black people, right? They use it amongst themselves to reclaim that word, as they put it, and I understand that argument. But if a white person uses it at them, it's obviously a disgusting, racist slur.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that, right? What's extraordinary about this is I was talking to my team. None of us realised that using this particular word that got you into so much trouble in a text message could ever lead to a potential prison sentence in this country.
Neither did I. It was shocking, and I'm still shocked now, if I'm honest. But obviously, I just believe that we all need to be careful with.
Well, do we? So that's an interesting question about this. Do we need to be careful, or do we need to fight back a bit about this? Is it right that you're sitting here too scared of saying that word, even in the context of talking about what happened to you, and not as a slur? You know, we live in a free democratic society. You should be able to say it in the context of what happened to you without fear of arrest,
Yeah.
it seems to me. And yet I understand why you don't want to, because you were told you might go to prison for 5 to 10 years.
Not just that, obviously, it's not in my character. I did that after the assault, when I had a brain injury, and like you don't act like yourself, you act out of character when you've had an injury to
What
your
what did your gay friends say about this?
I've had some beautiful messages from one of my managers as well, saying that they know I am not homophobic, 100%. I am the most kindest, loveliest person, and to not take any notice about what's been said about me, and that everyone knows, and they've all got my back, and they're all on my side.
Did any of the police feel uncomfortable about this when they were?
No. Nobody's even asked me, am I okay after the attack? Nobody.
No one's followed up on the
No.
attack at all?
No.
I just find that extraordinary.
So do I. especially in the courtroom when I got charged, and the judges, the judges could see the pictures, the messages that I sent with the injuries, which were quite bad. And still, I wasn't asked, was I okay?
Absolutely extraordinary. Elizabeth, thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
I'm very sorry about what happened to you. Not least because you're just being very honest. You said, you had 5 minutes of rage because of what had happened to you. You lost your mind a bit, used some intemperate language. You clearly regret it. You wish you hadn't done it. But to go through all that in England in 2025 seems to me absolutely outrageous.
It is.
I wish you luck with everything.
Thank you.
And with
Thanks
your career.
very much.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
For more on the other F word, joining me on the panel are host of The Crucible, Andrew Wilson, author of Bisexual The Basics and host of the Bisexual Brunch podcast, Lewis Oakley, host of Abet News, Marc Lamont Hill, and the author and chief political writer at Spiked, Brendan O'Neill. Well, welcome to all of you. Brendan O'Neill, let me start with you. I just did this extraordinary interview with Elizabeth Kinney, which I know you guys have all listened to. What did you make of that? I mean, I could barely believe what I was hearing.
I think it's obscene. I mean, if what Elizabeth's saying is true, and I have no reason to doubt that it is, it sounds like a real double wrong has been done here. Firstly, there is the fact that someone was arrested for saying a word. That should never happen, in my view, whatever word they use, even if they use it in public. But then secondly, she was arrested for using a word in a private communication. That is an outrage, completely and utterly obscene. That really does take us into the territory of thought policing. If the state can pry on our private conversations, drag us into the dock for things that we say to friends or frenemies or enemies, whoever it might be, that really does take us into Orwellian territory where the government has the right to snoop on what we say to fellow citizens. I think that is outrageous.
Lewis Oakley, I mean, to start with, as a gay man, did you get offended?
Bisexual.
My apologies. As a bisexual man, are you offended by the F word?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely got connotations there that are offensive. I mean, it's used to demean people and say that, gay people are, subhuman, disgusting, less manly. And that's what's inferred by it. So when it's used as abuse for young kids, like young 15-year-olds that are being called this in the playground, yes, it holds meaning. It, leads to mental health issues. It leads to people feeling that there is something wrong with them.
But if it's not being used as a homophobic slur, in other words, it's not being targeted at a gay person, and her explanation was that where she lives in the north of England. Well, no, Mark, I'll come to you. You might laugh, but I know there are parts of England where they would definitely not consider this to be a homophobic slur. They would just do it as a bit of, as they would see it, quite harmless banter. Now, we can argue about that, but it's different to say the N-word over here, which everyone would have a clear idea about. I don't think that this F word is seen in quite the same context, hence why she used it here, but not in a way that could be remotely construed as homophobic, which then begs the question, why has she been prosecuted for a hate crime prompting hate at gay people?
Can I just say, I think that it's almost worse that he was straight, because what she's doing, she's really angry in the moment. I totally get it. And she's thinking, how can I insult this man that has done this terrible thing to me? And by the way, I hope he gets convicted too. How can I demean him? I know, I'll call him gay because gay is so lower, gay is so anti-masculine. Exactly. And that's the whole point. That was the word there's 1,000 other words she could have used to describe it.
But she says she's not homophobic and wasn't saying it as a gay slur.
Okay, but so what's that? You want to say that people that use the N-word to describe people aren't racist? It's just their banter between their friends?
Well, no, because I think there is a qualitative difference in severity of these words. I mean,
so Mark, race is more important than sexuality.
Well, it's an interesting, arguable point. I mean, Mark, look, I would never use personally that F word. I would certainly never use the N word privately or in public. There probably is a qualitative difference between the two, I would say. Most people might think that. Certainly in England, I can imagine a lot of people using it, playgrounds and stuff, and not intending it to be a homophobic slur, not even knowing it is. So it's not as clear-cut as you might think it is. But regardless, as Brendan said, regardless of whether you think it is or isn't, the idea that you communicate that word in a private conversation to someone via text message who you know, and the next thing, 11 police officers are charging into your house to arrest you, that can't be right, surely.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So you raised 2 points. The first one, where I disagreed with you, wasn't whether or not people saw it as a homophobic slur. My point is something can be a homophobic slur or a racist slur or an anti-Semitic slur or whatever, even if a person doesn't realize that that's what they're doing. In the United States, I've spent a lot of time in locker rooms as an athlete. I spent a lot of times in fraternity houses. I spent a lot of time just in my neighborhood. And that word was used a lot. And it was often used not against gay people, although it certainly was used against gay people. It was also used against ostensibly straight people, as my colleague just said, for the purpose of demeaning, for joking. Sometimes it wasn't even an intense joke. Sometimes it wasn't outrage. It was just it was used ostensibly in a playful way. But the idea is, if the best way to mock you or to tease you or to make you seem less like a man in a society where being a man is the height of humanity is to call you gay,
But
then
you'd never be arrested.
You're still
Yeah, but hang on.
trafficking.
You'd never be arrested in America for using that word because the First Amendment would protect you.
So
you could be offensive in America in that way without actually treading into criminal activity because the First Amendment is there to protect that very thing, actually. It protects all speech, including hate speech.
So that's the second piece of it, right? I just wanted to address the idea of whether it's homophobic speech or not. But even if it's hate speech, let's say it rises to the level of hate speech, regardless, I don't think that the surveillance state should be overseeing us to decide when and where we're making the hate speech, even though I deplore hate speech. And then I also don't think the carceral state should be criminalizing or intensifying criminal penalties for using it. So yeah, it's awful to do. You shouldn't do it. But I could be the worst piece of human garbage on earth for using a word or a slur. That doesn't mean that I should get arrested for it. I think there's other ways to resolve that.
Yeah, Andrew Wilson, it was very interesting when Tucker jumped me with this because I wasn't aware of the case. So I was doing Tucker's show. We had a 90-minute chat about all sorts of things. The main premise of his conversation was that my country's gone for the dogs. I was defending it vigorously in some parts and agreeing with him in other parts, as I would America, by the way. Good and bad. But two great countries. However, when he went on this rant about this, it took me by surprise. I didn't not say this F word because I thought I might be arrested. I wasn't aware of the story. I went and did some research, and I discovered somebody had actually been arrested in my country for using that word in a text message. She says, being beaten up by a guy, having treatment in hospital, and texting somebody that she believed had been partly responsible for her getting the beating. And that beating has not been properly investigated. So I don't know enough about that part of it to determine how clear-cut that all was. But regardless, the idea that she could use that word in a text message, and the next thing, 11 police are banging on, not even banging in, they're coming in as she's having a bath, naked. Absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? December is Heart Awareness Month, which makes you think differently about the busy holidays. Stress rises, routines slip, and our bodies, especially the heart and blood vessels, feel the impact. Supporting healthy circulation becomes more than a wellness goal. It's essential. That's why it's important to boost your natural nitric oxide levels to keep the blood moving. Blood Flow 7 by Juvenon is a natural daily supplement. It's specifically designed to support healthy circulation so you can feel energized, clear-headed, and vibrant again. Packed with natural ingredients, it works by boosting nitric oxide levels to relax the blood vessels, helping blood flow freely. That means more oxygen and nutrients to your brain, heart, and muscles. All with one dose a day to improve stamina, heart, health, and vitality, all without caffeine or stimulants. Try Blood Flow 7 today and feel the difference where it matters most, inside your veins. Visit bloodflow7.com/uncensored and get 30% off your Blood Flow 7 order today.
Well, it's actually, I'm not even surprised. So the idea here is, I guess you could get SA'd, and if you call your assailant the, quote, F-slur, you go to jail, right? Some country you got there. By the way, let's point this out, that progressives have for years, as these guys say, hey, we don't want to put in hate speech laws and have people arrested and this and that. They've been doing the same type of stuff for years. They do depersoning, debanking, deplatforming, keeping people away from their cash. If you touch on any issues that they don't like, they've been doing that for years to conservatives. So they're doing the exact same thing that the government over there is doing. They're just using the private marketplace to do it. So what they do is they will go on these massive campaigns to deperson a human being from society because they have wrongthink, or they say a word that it makes somebody else upsetty spaghetti, right? That's what they do. And the fact of the matter is like, who gives a shit? Who cares if this woman didn't care? Who cares if she was like, you know what, I am homophobic, and I said it because I'm homophobic. That's her business, right? You can say what you want. You're supposed to, at least in free nations, and that's not what you have there. And that was Tucker Carlson's point. You don't have a free nation there. You have a nation which is under a dictatorship.
Hang on, Mark. Out of interest, Andrew, would you use that word?
Sure, you use it all the time. It's one of the best ways to describe friends. Right?
Would you use it? Would you use it on a show like this? It's not
meant to be. Look, it's not meant to be. Can I say it?
Would you say it? I mean, would you normally use a word?
Well,
like
I wouldn't say it for the purposes of TOS. But I mean, if I was allowed to, sure, it's one of my favorite words to say. There's nothing wrong with the word. What happens is this. This word is not even being used as a homophobic slur, and it hasn't since I was a kid. Okay, that's the truth. People call each other this all the time, for literally for fun, just because it's fun. You'll go, you like run into a buddy of yours. What's up, F-slur? Right? You don't care, and you give each other a high five.
I don't think that's true,
right?
though.
It is true. Look,
no,
listen,
I think if you ask gay people, they will tell you it is often used in a derogatory way and offensive way intended to demean them. And it's done all the time. I don't think we can dispute that.
But you know what? Everything, you can use any word as derogatory if you want to, or you can use words and they're not derogatory. It depends on the context. And we're social creatures. I'm tired of people acting like socially everybody's retarded. We know that there's context for words. And when you say, in proper context, this word to buddies and people in this, whatever, it's not a problem socially, and it never has been. And Mark might shake his head, but I bet you in high school he was calling half of his friends that word, and they were probably calling it to him back. Why? Because it's funny. That's why it's funny. And
were you Marc Lamont Hill?
So here's, was I? No, but
you've never used any derogatory term at school about anyone as a joke?
You're asking a different question now than, okay.
Well,
now
just
you're asking
generally.
a different question. His question was that, again, the answer to the first question is no, I didn't use the F word in high school as he alleged. Second question is, have I ever used an offensive term? Absolutely. When I was a child, but as an adult, I like to think that I've grown beyond using the words that I used as a child. And I agree that social context matters. And I agree that we should always consider social context. We live in a society where gay people are still abused, where gay people are still slandered, where gay people are still physically assaulted, where gay people are marginalized. And that F word is used very often to do, and it's often accompanied by harm. And so if we know that, I agree, when you walk up to your friend and give him a high five and use that word, you may not be attempting to smuggle in homophobia. I don't think you are. But what I'm saying is we're normalizing a word that still accompanies harm and still kind of normalizes what we do and how we treat as a society, LGBTQI folk. And so I'm just saying, okay, why don't we pick a different word that doesn't cause all of this hullabaloo?
All right, the bigger issue...
The problem is like, because they're not as fun. And the reason is, the more that you try to make these pushbacks, these social pushbacks, and tell people what they can and can't say, it makes them want to say it more. And you know what, Mark? Like, that's what happens. The second you start making social pushback and say, hey, this word you've been calling your friends and you guys have been joking around for years saying this stuff, you're not allowed to say it anymore because now somebody's going to get too upset about it. It literally gives them incentive to say it more. That's what happens. That's how social context actually works.
But that's not what I'm saying.
If you guys wouldn't make a big deal out of it, if you guys wouldn't make, hang on, Mark, almost done. If you guys wouldn't make a big deal out of it, we wouldn't have a big deal, right? But you guys make the big deal out of it.
All right, let me bring in Brendan, because
so I'm not...
well, hang on, Mark. I'll come back to you. The bigger issue, it seems to me, here with the UK is that the Times newspaper recently revealed that police officers are making 12,000 arrests a year under Section 127 of the Communications Act and Section 1 of the Malicious Communications Act. In other words, similar instances to this. That's 30 arrests a day over offensive posts on social media and other platforms. Thousands of people being detained and questioned for sending messages that, quote, cause annoyance, inconvenience, or anxiety to others via the internet, telephone, or mail. There's been a 58% increase in these arrests since before the pandemic. I mean, this seems completely nuts to me. Joe Rogan said they've already arrested 12,000 people for social media posts. We got a clip of him talking about this.
They've already arrested 12,000 people for social media posts.
That's insane.
Above and beyond every other country, way above Russia. Russia was like 400 last year. The UK is 12,000. Any criticism of immigration, any criticism of grooming gangs and people being raped, any talk about how horrible this is, they come visit you. It's like someone's trying to destroy England.
Now, I would say, Brendan, that's probably a mischaracterization. If you actually went over the 12,000 cases, you could probably see a lot of very offensive things in there. I don't know, but I'm surmising It's not just criticising an immigration policy that's causing the arrest. But in a country that's supposed to be one of the leaders of free speech historically in the world, this is pretty terrifying, isn't it? It's just Kafka stuff.
It's awful. It's like the Stasi. You know, older listeners and viewers will remember the German Democratic Republic, and they had the Stasi that would literally listen in on private conversations, that would literally rent out the apartment above the apartment of some dodgy person and listen through the floor to make sure they weren't saying problematic things. We now have a similar system in the UK. People are being arrested and in some cases punished for things they say. And, you know, it's now December, so any minute now, we are going to see the annual controversy about the Pogues' great song, Fairy Tale of New York, which has the famous lyric, "You scumbag, you maggot, you cheap, lousy, beep." You know, We're not allowed to say it, apparently, but that is a great song. That word is often bleeped out. And this is another issue about these insulting words. I actually think what's most insulting to gay people, ethnic minority people, all sorts of minority groups, what's most insulting is actually censorship, because censorship infantilizes them. Censorship says to them, you are such a weak part of society that we need to institute these laws and these rules to protect you from offensive words. It's actually a reversal of the great gains of the civil rights era, when we have these kinds of rules that say we must protect these poor little dears from ever hearing an offensive term. So I think these words are actually, the power of these words is less worrying to me than the power of censorship to infantilize minority groups and punish people who want to express themselves.
All right, Lewis, as a poor little dear, would you like to respond?
I want to start with the numbers that you just talked about, because I think there is a point where we have to look at the reality of the modern world in which we live. Yes, we all want to see more convictions for rape and murder. Those things are very hard to prove, whereas communication, we all communicate. 90% of it now is online.
But why should the police be policing speech that doesn't actually incite specific violence, which is, to me, always the line.
So our law
you cannot cross, right? If I say to people that you live at a certain address, go around there and attack him, right? That's a clear incitement to violence against a specific individual. That's a criminal offence, and I should be arrested for that, and there should be no issue of that being a free speech issue. But if I just hate you or want to say derogatory things about you, or you do to me, that shouldn't be something that precipitates 11 police turning up at the door.
Well, two things. We have protected characteristics, right? We understand that in UK law, it was only 1967 in this country it stopped being illegal to be gay. It was only in 2003 that we got rid of things like Section 28. The law has had a real hand in causing stigma and discrimination against gay people that did not disappear in 20-something years. Point. So it's right that the law steps in and says, you know what, we've had a hand in this. We're going to step in and protect you, because it takes a preventative measure, much like the NHS, where it says, you know what, rather than treat you when you're sick, let's just prevent people from getting sick where we can. And it's the same thing here. Yes, the line is calling for violence, but if you can stop people hating on people for their individual identity, you can say you're stupid, you're an idiot, you've done this wrong, whatever. But if it's targeted, if it's hate on you because of your race,
is it okay
because of your sexuality, because of your religion.
Why does nobody get arrested for calling Donald Trump a Nazi?
Well, no, but you know what? The Nazi thing is interesting, because I do think...
It's not just interesting, it's probably the most egregious thing you could possibly call somebody, is comparing him directly to Adolf Hitler, who murdered 12 million people, who gassed 6 million Jews in concentration camps, right? The idea that
maybe the Americans should bring in some speech.
But the idea that that is not an arrestable offence by comparison to using the F word against a gay person seems to me to be completely disproportionate.
Well, you're absolutely right, but here's my thing. I think that the Nazi thing is an interesting thing because actually this proves that it's not a left or a right-wing issue because actually since the assassination of Charlie Kirk and those 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life, the right has been saying, watch your rhetoric. And they understand that whilst people aren't calling for violence against them, speaking about them as Nazis is increasing the likeliness of someone thinking, oh my God, there's Nazis, I better get a gun and do something about it. So they understand
They're not calling for their
not
arrest,
calling for
dude.
violence, but calling them
on.
words starts that dehumanization that leads to violence. So thank you for proving my
This
point.
is like
but
this
these
is
are
sick.
opposite sides.
This is actually sick. What you're saying, dude. What you're saying is that you're calling for people to be arrested for words that make you upset. That's sick. This is the country of John Locke. Hang on. This is the country of John Locke. This is the country that was supposed to, we adopted our constitution based on these principles of free speech. And, you sick bastards are running around actually calling for the arrest of people because they say mean words. What the hell is wrong with you?
This is the thing with free speech. You can still make your point. You can still make your point. What is it that you can't say? It's not my fault that people can't articulate themselves well. You can talk about crime statistics based on gender and sexuality and race, whatever you want.
Why
You just can't use discriminatory words to do it.
Care worker who's angry because she's been assaulted and is in hospital and is firing off her angry thoughts while she said she had a head injury, and she uses this F word, and because of that she ends up with a conviction.
Well, hold on, Piers. We only got her side of the story. Reading the articles, it says that there was a series of abusive and homophobic messages.
Yeah.
Those were then showed. The friend said
they weren't homophobic.
The friend that she said
they weren't homophobic.
Hold on, that's what the prosecutor said.
They weren't aimed at somebody for their sexuality.
But so what? If I go up to someone in the street, so if I go up to someone in the street and start attacking them,
well, okay. By comparison, if I use the N word against you,
I still haven't had a chance to respond to you.
Right? Or if I use the N word against Andrew, is that a racist slur against him? No.
No. So if I go up in the street and start,
there has to be some intent.
No, if I start going up to someone in the street and screaming anti-Semitic things at them, and then it turns out they're not Jewish, the police aren't going to be like, oh well, like you went to attack someone based on the.
Hang on, but that's my point though. If you can't be anti-Semitic against somebody who's not Jewish.
But we go back to, I think it's worse, because the gay slur was made to make him seem like less of a man, to sort of dehumanize him.
She didn't intend it like that, and I think intent does matter. Mark, you wanted to jump in about the Nazi thing. What was your observation about that? My only point about, I don't think, by the way, I don't think people should be arrested for either, but it just seems to me an extraordinary disparity between, you can just casually call somebody a Nazi and compare them to Adolf Hitler, and there's no accountability. But if you use the F word in a private text, you get arrested by 11 cops.
Yeah, we're in like 7 directions here, so I'm going to just try and in like 10 seconds deal with each one, total. First, I agree that no one should be arrested for any of this speech. Let me say that. So this is not a defense of arresting people, because that keeps being said. I'm not defending that. I do think the Nazi piece is different, but it doesn't mean that it should be responded to differently. For example, you may say to me, Piers, because you're policing my speech around not using the F word or the N word or whatever, that you're a fascist. That would be a reasonable criticism. I think you'd be wrong, but I think that'd be a reasonable criticism. But you'd be saying that my behavior is actually similar to that of a particular thing. When people are looking at Donald Trump's behavior, it's not casual at all. They're saying the extraordinary and maybe historically unprecedented way that he is undermining American democracy is reminiscent of the Nazi regime. You may disagree. I'm not telling you to be wrong or right.
You don't honestly think that.
Well, let me.
You honestly think Donald Trump is a Nazi?
No, Piers, if you allow me to finish, you'd understand that I'm not saying that. Just allow me to finish the sentence. My next sentence was, it does not matter whether you agree or disagree with the claim. The point is, I'm allowed to have a political ideology. And I wouldn't make that claim, by the way. I wouldn't call Donald Trump a Nazi. But my point is
it a slur?
I believe that, and I'm
is
making
it a slur against Donald Trump?
No.
Wow.
That's my Piers, I'm the one saying no.
So it's not a slur to call somebody. It's not a slur to call somebody a Nazi, but it is a slur to use the F word about somebody who's not even gay. Explain that.
No, I can't explain what you just said, because that's not the point I'm making. You've recharacterized what I said.
I'm not sure what the point is you're making.
What I'm saying. Allow me to finish, and you will. What I'm saying is, If you are making an analysis of somebody and you in good faith believe that their behavior, similar to if you call me a fascist, I don't think I'm a fascist, but you have a right to say that, and I wouldn't call that a slur. If my behavior is reminiscent of that, similar to the Nazi or any other argument that you make, I'm not going to call it a slur just because I disagree with you. Where it becomes different is if I'm attacking somebody for their identity, where I am insulting somebody for their identity, that becomes a slur. And in the last example you gave, Piers, where somebody calls somebody the F word or somebody high-fives their friend, as my other colleague said, it gives them a high five and they're not even gay and they don't mean it that way. It may not be a slur, but you're still trafficking in homophobia. You're still trafficking in racism.
All right, Andrew.
Hang on. This is illogical. This is actually illogical. Listen, I'll tell you why. The reason that this is illogical is because
and then allow me to
entire
respond, because every time you respond and tell me something, I don't get to respond. Go ahead.
Hang on, I understand, but the foundation of your argument is these words cause harm based on social stigma, and the social stigma is caused because you're using a harmful word. Calling people Nazis and fascists would create this exact same stigma that you're saying these other protected classes deserve. Your argument is a contradiction. It's P and not P at the same time. It's contradictory. So either it's one or the other, Mark. Either the social stigma needs to be guarded against. Hang on. And in the UK, people are getting arrested for calling Donald Trump a Nazi as much as they get arrested for calling somebody the F-slur, because the social stigma is the thing that you're after. So you have to pick one, dude. Pick a lane.
All right. Now allow me to respond. Again, you have mischaracterized my argument. My point is not that social stigma is the predicate for deciding whether or not someone can say something or not. If it were, then you would be right. All words can have social stigma. I could call you a conservative.
Then what is it?
And you could have a social stigma. You could call.
Then what determines
again,
it?
Allow me to finish now. Please allow me to finish. You insisted on being allowed to finish. Let me do the same.
Yeah, I know. I just want the answer, though. What could it be?
Do you think it's easy to get the answer if you let me talk or if you don't?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what I'm saying is, again, if just all words can potentially have stigma. If you call me a bleeding heart liberal, I may find that to produce stigma for me. I'm not saying that stigma alone is the issue. Stigma is not the predicate for me. And again, I'm not making the case that anybody should be arrested for any of it because it's so gray and slippery. I'm saying don't arrest anybody for any of the slang or any of the slurs, any of the language, any of the words that are being used against people. I'm saying don't arrest anybody for any of it. But the distinction I'm making here is not one of slur versus or stigma versus non-stigma. What I'm saying is that as a community, we can certainly agree that assessing someone's behavior, even if it causes stigma, is okay. You not liking it isn't enough for me to stop saying it. What I'm saying is if we as a community decide that, hey, this particular word, this particular framework has historically caused harm to people, not based on what they believe, not based on anything they've done, but based on a particular identity category, I'm saying we can make different decisions. We may not agree on what the decision is. That's
stigma,
okay.
though, Mark. That's stigma. You are making a foundation.
Let me jump in. Hang on.
Stigma is not the foundation for my stigma is not the foundation.
You just don't realize
all words can produce. It's not.
Let me ask Andrew a question.
You don't realize it.
Let me ask Andrew a question.
That's not what it's. Just repeatedly shouting it is doesn't change the fact that it's not.
I'd like to ask a question.
Let me ask a question. I'm stipulating.
Let me ask a question.
I'm stipulating that it can all have stigma.
Mark, let me ask you a question of Andrew, which is about free speech, but it's a different twist on it. Because it's all been very anti the UK, this debate, as indeed the debates raised in America about our free speech issues, which are legitimate. I agree. But a Reuters report recently said that more than 600 Americans were fired, suspended, placed under investigation, or disciplined by employers for comments about Charlie Kirk's assassination. That was after a review of court records, public statements, local media reports, and interviews. Some were dismissed after celebrating or mocking Kirk's death. 15 were punished for allegedly invoking karma or divine justice. 9 others were disciplined for variance on good riddance. Other offending posts appeared to exult in the killing or express hope that other Republican figures would be next. And we just had the president-elect of the Oxford Union in the UK who was sort of de-presidented, removed from his presidency, which he was about to take over, because he had reacted in a sort of celebratory way when he heard the news of Charlie Kirk being shot. Now, in its way, is that not the very kind of censorship that you're talking about? Or do you think there's a line between accountability to your employers and to police criminal activity?
No, the left has been
I think
depersoning
they're
and
different.
canceling people for I mean, to my whole lifetime, and it has whipped up into a fervor since Trump's election. But even pre-election, they don't just deperson you; they debank you, they deplatform you. You're not allowed to say anything. They run massive harassment campaigns. The first time I've ever seen you poke the bear, poke the bear, poke the bear, they finally did something, and all that happened was some people lost their jobs. They weren't depersoned. They weren't completely ostracized from all of regular society because they said a no-no word. These were people who were celebrating in the streets horrific murder, which they likely contributed to through their own rhetoric, right? That's what actually happened there. And
language causes problems?
Hang on. All that happened here, right, was for once the right actually pushed back after you poked us enough times. So, look, am I saying that people should get fired from their jobs? No, of course not. But what I am saying is that there's a clear difference between depersoning and debanking people and ostracizing them from society completely, and an employer saying you don't represent my company very well, so you're fired.
Okay.
And that's the distinction.
All right, got to leave it there.
Yeah,
Fascinating. I've got to leave it there, Mark. I'm sorry. We're running out of time, but fascinating debate. Thank you all very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.